Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I'm honored to be with Ryan Foley on Herculean Physique. Greetings, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing good, sir. How are you?
I'm doing good, and I'm really looking forward to your presentation today. That you got a lot of really interesting information that you've gotten together, and the torch is now yours.
Well,
Onward.
good. Thank you very much. So before we get started, since this is really our first time to get to talk to one another, I know it's not maybe not socially acceptable, but yeah, Happy New Year. I hope that everything's been going well for you on your end. But since we're switching over to this new venue where you're shifting off of Blog Talk Radio and now jumping on here to YouTube, since you're probably going to find a whole new audience that maybe didn't find you before. So I'm curious, and I'm sure probably the viewers or the listeners, depending upon how they're consuming this media, uh, what prompted you to go through and start this project that you've been running for several years now?
Which the audio or the video?
Pretty much all of it. I mean, you reach out to so many different people. I was just curious, what was the inspiration behind that?
Well, I have always sought venues or platforms where I can communicate. I started giving public talks when I was in high school, and then also metaphysical groups, UFOs, theosophical, religion, you name it. I've talked about it one place or another place. And I was interviewed on a radio show at one point, a new radio show. And that's what started me on that path. And I've done it for years, and then stopped for a while, and then I started again. And I had a television show on cable for a while, and that was a lot of fun to do. I had that for 3 years, and then I moved to Pennsylvania, so I couldn't restart it in Pennsylvania. In New York, I had it running, and then it became e-radio, and I did it for a while. I was publishing something called the Barbarian Chronicles, where I focused on the sword and sorcery more than anything else in the comic books, in the movies, sword and sorcery in bodybuilding, and so forth. And then I decided that I was all over the place with the different shows, so I started to refocus everything to my greatest passion, which was Greek mythology. And so I reframed everything in the context of Greek mythology. Greek mythology informs our culture on various levels, like politics. You have Democrats and Republicans, the ancient Greeks and the ancient Romans. They had these forms of government, and that's still playing out in our particular day. There are games, there are role-playing games, there are video games, there are comic books. You've written some of the best graphic novels in Greek mythology that I've ever come across. So that body of lore or the stories are still alive in our culture. They still inform people and they still guide people, either positively or negatively. I've always said that the Greek myths don't tell you what to do, they tell you what can happen. So you could learn from something bad that happens as well as from something good that happens. And the heroes, if you get to know your hero too well, they might become a villain to you. The Greek heroes are like that too. They had positive qualities that benefited themselves, their families, and the world. And then they have darker, more negative qualities. So it's the same thing. It's like looking into a mirror and learning life's lessons through not only your mistakes and the mistakes of those you know, but the mistakes of the gods and the heroes and all these other iconic figures. So it's my passion. I did a few exercises. I worked in vocational rehabilitation for many years. I was like a vocational counselor. I worked in workforce development, and I did a lot of exercises. And there was one exercise that really impacted my life. It was defining yourself in 2 words. And so it encompasses everything in your entire life. And I found that for me, it was living mythology. So, I like living mythology. I like mythology that's still living in our culture. I like creating opportunities for people to experience mythology from new perspectives. So those are my 2 words. And as I get older and I realize that the days before me are much less than the days behind me, I try to spend my time on things that I'm truly passionate about, events, people, places, pets that I truly have a passion for. So I really like you. I really like talking to you, and we've had some phenomenal conversations. So this is part of spending my time here wisely, because out of our conversations comes a lot of information that benefits people. So that's how I got into it. Blog Talk Radio, I've been on there for quite a while. I was on other people's stations, first as a guest, then as a host. Then I got my own station, my own channel, and I had over 1,000 shows. I think I had like 1,500 shows on my channel. Those are gone, unfortunately. But we are like dust in the wind. So my show is mostly gone, like, although some copies remain of particular episodes. A lot of the magazine articles that I wrote that were on the internet and accessible, those sites don't exist anymore. So it's all part of the journey.
Sure.
Thank you for
Well,
asking.
so boy, yeah, I mean, because I was curious, what got you started on this, and one of the things that I've been doing here recently. So one, I'm going to think about the 2 word description for myself. I don't have anything right now, so next month I mean, because that's a very interesting thought experiment. I mean, to go through and define yourself in 2 words, it's a tough ask, but it's something that I'm curious to kind of delve into. But so in going through and doing my cardio. I've been doing a lot of research into Stoic philosophy. And
Mhm.
one of the things that they talk about with that is, one of the things you're supposed to be doing is, you're supposed to be reading, because the reading goes through and it allows you a connection to people who have long parted from this world. I mean, you can go through and you can read the innermost thoughts that were never really supposed to be published, but you can read the journals of Marcus Aurelius. I mean, one of the greatest men in history that didn't want to be emperor, but yet was. And the things that he talks about, then are just as relevant today. There's still things that we're fighting with and struggling with. And so to be able to look backward like that, I think is absolutely fantastic. And that's immediately what I thought of whenever you're talking about mythology. And I was fascinated with mythology since I first discovered it really in 7th grade, where you start going through and you start reading the Edith Hamilton books and things like that. But it's very similar. I believe that comic books are our modern day mythology. It's one of the few intellectual properties that I think are still going to be around. The characters that we have now, I think they're still going to be around in another 100 years. There's not a lot of things that can make that claim. But so yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And learning those lessons, one of the things that I found so fascinating is you can come along and you can tell kids, you can go, hey, don't do drugs, and maybe they don't listen to you so much. But if they see, if they're reading an issue of Spider-Man and they see how Spider-Man's friend is struggling with drugs, that message tends to resonate a lot more. If we can go through, and if you can tell that, if you can if you can tell the lesson through a story, I think it tends to hang on to people. They tend to absorb it a little bit better because they can see themselves in those stories. And so, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think mythology is one of these things that can reach back from the past and still share things that are relevant today, even in in our modern times. And
And
so,
it
I'm
is
sorry. Go
uh,
ahead.
it is the mythology. I believe so as well. I have a whole shelf of books just dealing with that one topic alone, how comic books are part of modern mythology. And you can see some of the ancient stories retold, new stories being created. And you can have, as it was in antiquity when cultures started interacting with each other, you have like the same character appearing under different names in different cultures or appearing under the same name in different cultures. So, like now,
Sure.
for instance, you'll have them in Campfire. You'll have them in DC, you'll have them in Marvel, you'll have them in a lot of independent comics. And it's Hercules, but it's a different version of Hercules told through the culture of the comic book or the origin of the comic book creators.
Well, whenever after, unfortunately, my professional writing career with graphic novels was kind of cut short unceremoniously, unfortunately. But I really like the fact that we were able to go through and kind of break down those works and talk about, kind of give people an inside view into how we went through it and created those novels. And then once we had kind of exhausted our catalog, I was really excited whenever you reached out to me and said, "Hey, let's go through," and because you had learned that I was bodybuilding, and so you said let's go through and let's share those stories, and so hopefully we can go through and help people, and that's always been my goal here. So for maybe this is potentially a brand new viewer, brand new listener that's experiencing this for the first time. I've been bodybuilding since June of 2014. So I've been doing this for almost 11 years now, and there's still things that I'm still learning new stuff all the time. It is a constantly evolving process that we're involved in. And so one of the things that I really wanted to do is I wanted to make everyone's pathway shorter
Hmm.
or easier. Because if you decide to take on any sort of fitness program, regardless of what it is, I do feel that bodybuilding is an excellent exercise. It is a wonderful regiment that you can put yourself through because bodybuilding is one of the few sports, if we want to call it that, that helps every other sport. So no matter what else you play, be it football, basketball, baseball, tennis, anything, everyone can benefit from lifting weights. And so they have the scientific evidence that's proven that resistance training is extremely important when it comes to our personal health. And so what I always wanted to do was to come on through here and be able to, again, make everyone's pathway a little shorter, a little easier, because this is going to be one of the most difficult things you can do. And what I have discovered, what this has created within me is this desire to want to reach backwards and help the people who are coming up behind me who maybe need a little bit of encouragement. And so, one of the things that I really want to do is I want to be upfront with the fact that I'm not receiving any sort of compensation for doing this. I'm not pushing anything. I'm not selling anything. Really,
Nor
I'm offering.
labor of
Right.
love. We
Yeah.
share experiences.
Exactly. Yeah. We're doing this to help other people out.
Hmm.
And so with that, so there's no reason for me to come on here and make any sort of outrageous claims. I'm not trying to get clickbait or anything like that. But so I want to be honest with people. And so we didn't get a chance to talk in January. Um, but so January typically it tends to be this time of renewal. It tends to be this time where everyone is going to have the most motivation because they see that 1-1 on the calendar, and so they say, okay, I want to get in shape. I want to lose some weight. That's always a big thing on everyone's list. And so what happened to me was, so I was going through and I was designing a brand new program. And when I'm going through and doing that, I'm testing different exercises.
Hmm.
I'm trying to figure out what's the best way to target, my upper, middle, and lower, traps, and how can I go through and target my lats more. And every time that you go through and you do something like that, you're putting an exertion on your body that you're not quite prepared for, and that's going to go through. It's going to drain an awful lot out of you. So, um, so while most people, and so I was training really hard in December. And so here it was, first of the year. I was ready to go in like gangbusters and really start putting in even more work. And I had a bit of a crash where just and so I was really worried about it. But then I went through and I started analyzing it because that's what we're doing here. We're scientists to a degree. We're going through, we're testing different stuff, we're figuring out what works and what doesn't. And so I really started to get worried about this. I really started to get nervous. And so then I had to go through and I had to figure out, okay, well, why did I have this crash? And so again, it's only looking back that I realized, okay, so December I was really working hard. I was really putting in all this extra time. And so then so I got exhausted. And so what I did is I shifted and I lost that mind muscle connection that you get with the iron. So anyone who has any sort of experience lifting, they'll know what I'm talking about. Where it is this inanimate object, yet there is this strange emotional connection that you have with that. And there are some days where you feel like you can lift the entire gym and you feel so strong and you're happy. And then there's other times where it's like, no, wait a minute, I just lifted this same amount of weight for more reps last week, but this week I can't do it. And so my stamina was dropping tremendously, and so I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. But instead I kept pushing myself to go to the gym when maybe I should have took some time off, or took a step back so that way I could go through and I could make a running jump forward. But so because I kind of got in my own head, and so there were times where I just went up and I just did straight cardio. And so that way, I'm still up and around and I'm moving and things like that. But then we got into a really bad cold snap. We got snowed in for a couple of days, so that went through, and that threw me off my game a little bit. And then up at my gym, they have a chart that has the top 15. It's like a dry erase board, but they have the top 15 people, the most active people in the gym. And there's been quite a few months where I've been number one on that list, or number one, or yeah. So I was like, really something to be proud of. And then for December, I was listed as third. And then I got my numbers in for January and I had dropped to 8. And I was like, well, bravo, look at you. Yeah, you were at third and now you're at 8. And I had to go through and change my thinking, to be like, dude, you were 8th out of the entire gym. There's a lot of people out there who would be really proud just to break the list. And so you're mad at yourself, or you feel like you've let yourself down because you've dropped in this status. But why did you take that time off? Okay, you were exhausted, you were snowed in, you were iced in, and it was really cold. And so there were times, and Oklahoma, we're getting ready to get into it. It's coming, and I think it's going to be here tomorrow around 9 o'clock. We've got really brutal temperatures coming in, and they're forecasting a lot of snow. And so I have to do what I call my Foley risk reward ratio, where, okay, so if I get my car out there in the snow to do what? To get one gym session in, and what happens if my car goes in the ditch? What happens if my car breaks down? What happens if I get a flat tire? Now I'm out in 0-degree temperatures changing a tire. It's just the risk is not worth the reward. So I am trying to mentally calm down over everything that's been going on. So just like, hey, it's okay to go through and take those days off. And then there's 2 other reasons why I'm not so worried about this, and I'll get into that later on in our conversation. But so I just had to change my focus to go, man, you're not quitting, you're not giving up, because you're going through and you're making these changes to adjust it. But there are just times where you have to go through, and so these aren't excuses. And I know everyone talks about that. No excuses ever. Everyone get up to the gym and find your why. But there are times where you do have to go through and say, yeah, it's okay to go through and take a day off. So I'm just curious if you've ever come across a scenario like this, and if so, what did you do to push past that mental barrier?
Well, I'm in a scenario like that now. I have spinal arthritis. So slowly it's been robbing me of mobility and flexibility. And sometimes it takes all my effort just to get up from a chair. So my doctor referred me to physical therapy. I've had physical therapy in the past, and I've worked with physical therapists in the past. So I'm a believer in physical therapy. So today she was doing an examination, and I told her what I was doing, that, okay, I can't lift heavy weights, but I could do certain things. So I was using my physical resistance, like in dynamic tension or like isometrics and isotonics. I was using my body's resistance at 0 pounds. And then I was using up to 12, 15 pounds for some of the exercises. And I told her that I do this every day, and I do as much as I can do. Some days the pain is so great that I can't do very much. And she had said that If I wasn't doing these exercises, I'd be in very bad shape. But as it is, because I've been doing these exercises as much as I can do every day, I'm ahead of the game in recuperating. And she asked me, what is my goal? And I told her, other than being able to walk around and do things like that, is I have a passion for bodybuilding. I want to be able to tackle the weights every day, and that's very important to me. So that's what I want ideally out of physical therapy. That not only will I be more flexible and be able to ambulate better. But I want to be able to actually do weightlifting. And I told her that my legs aren't affected. And back in the day, I used to do leg presses of over 1,000 pounds. So I told her I want to go on the leg press machines, even if it has nothing to do with my therapy, because that I love doing legs. So she said that we can do that, and that could fit into my therapy too. So I'm in that situation. Also, the routines that I was following for years that kept me healthy and happy. Because I got the spinal arthritis, I just couldn't physically do them. And I'm very optimistic like you. And for a while, I too berated myself. But then it's like, oh, there's nothing I can do about it. If I tried to tackle the heavy weights now, I get an injury. And how will that help me? I did my assessment. My getting injured on top of the spinal pain and the spinal discomfort and the spinal condition, what good would it do me to have another injury? So as long as I try my best and I do everything I can and then some, and as you pointed out with reading, I'm ordering books on muscle building for seniors and all sorts of exercises that are specifically for seniors and their balance. And I never thought I would have to study that type of information and do exercise on that level. But that's what's here. So I want to benefit from other people's experiences and try what they've done, what they've uh, pointed out as a possible path. I know from years of experience that not everything works for everybody and nothing works forever. So it's, as you said, it's a road of trials, it's a road of experimentation, and we have to be like a scientist. This is what my reality is. This is what I'm doing to affect my reality and move things in a direction that I would like things to go. And I will make mistakes. I will have many triumphs. And as long as I don't give up, I'll get there eventually. And I see myself in my mind when I meditate without these spinal problems and moving around and lifting heavy weights and being happy about it. So I believe in optimism and I believe in being as positive as we possibly can. So that's what I have to go on right now.
Very well said. Very well said. Yeah, and I think one of the things that I think a lot of people go through and they make a bit of a misconception whenever you use the term bodybuilder. And even if you're to go through on, if you went through and you did a Google image search, a Google image search, and you type in bodybuilder, what you're going to see is the best in the world. And it's going to be those guys that you see with the 7 foot shoulders and that shrinks
Right.
down to the 4 foot, 4 inch pair of jockey shorts, and that's not necessarily what bodybuilding is. And that's what I think a lot of people do make a confusing, or they confuse it where they think that, oh, you're going through and you're lifting all these heavy weights. And what I've discovered is that it's really more about lifting what I would call manageable heavy.
Right.
You're pushing your body to failure. And so if you're pushing your body to failure, what you're going to see now, you can do that either through an extensive amount of rep ranges, or if you're going through, you're putting in 25 reps as opposed to 6 or 8. So maybe you're going with a lighter weight, but you're doing more but you're doing more reps of it. And so the goal of bodybuilding is to go through and build this complete physique. So it's not just doing a bench press to go through and target your chest. It's a bench press where you're at an incline, at a flat bench, and at a decline. So that way you could hit all three areas of the
Right.
pecs. It's about developing this well-rounded physique. And that's the other thing that you brought up that, boy, I want to go through and I want to reinforce here. Um, by going through and developing a healthy body, I think that it's going to prevent injury, especially as we get older. I've seen the cross sections of it wasn't an X-ray. I think it might have been like an MRI maybe, but it was a cross section of two different legs, one of which was, someone who lifted weights regularly, and then someone who didn't, and you could see side by side, the amount of muscle loss for as compared to someone who's going through and lifting all those heavy weights.
Mm.
Also, whenever you start into a bodybuilding program, your whole life you become obsessed with protein.
Yes.
What's the protein count in this shake, and have I gotten my necessary protein?
Yeah,
And whenever you're in the hospital, if you're recovering from surgery, one of the things, go ahead, sir.
no, you go ahead. I was
Okay.
just getting to the
Uh,
protein I'm
yeah.
doing.
Whenever
Very
you're in whenever you're in a protein, surplus where you're going through, you're trying to find it. So if you've been in surgery, that's one of the first things they're going to do is they're going to put you on a high protein diet because it goes through and it speeds healing. So I joke on a fairly regular basis that, I mean, I heal like Wolverine now because I'm taking in 75 grams of protein in my breakfast, whereas some people may not get 75 grams worth of protein all day. And so by going through and doing that, so it speeds the healing. Your muscles are there to help protect your bones. I just think it's so much better. That's why I want to encourage everyone to go through and get on a program like that, just because it'll go through and help you out in the long run.
Yes, I believe that too. And I experiment with proteins. Like right now, I'm on a high protein, high fat, low carbohydrate, and moderate fiber. So the carbs that I eat are high in fiber, but I don't eat a lot of carbs. And that diet I find manages my diabetes. It keeps my blood sugar.
Okay.
And in terms of protein, depending on how strict like a carnivore type diet I'm on at any particular point in time, I have different protein. But when I'm not on a strict phase, I like plant proteins, and I like beef protein, and I like some milk protein. So none of these companies endorse me, and I have no connection to them. But currently, I'm finding that Owen and Sun Warrior are good for like vegetable protein for me at this particular point in time. The Jocko Milk is good with is milk protein. And then I have a couple of different brands I'm experimenting with their beef protein. So I'm pretty happy with the protein, and I have a lot of protein every day too. And I feel that it helps me heal. It certainly fills me up, and it's been helping me manage my blood sugar. So I'm really happy with it.
For me, it's chicken. Just so much chicken, but yet I still haven't gotten tired of it. So that's the thing. I think it's so crazy about it. I'm having that,
Indeed.
4, 5 times a week, and we just find different ways to bring it into different recipes.
Yeah, with me it's beef. I haven't gotten tired of that. Today we had steak. The day before we had ground beef. My wife and my son, who still lives with us, they're not as fond of beef as I am. They'll have it like maybe once or twice a week, but I have beef if I can every single day. Occasionally I'll have some pork. I'll have eggs. I'll have cheese, but not too much cheese. But I love protein, and I have, a substantial amount of protein every day. And even though initially the doctor or the dietitian will say not to have too much fat or not to have too much protein, the protein and the fat keeps my lipids down. And the protein does not seem to be doing me,
Okay.
you know, I need the protein to do whatever workouts I still can do. And even though again I'm not at my best right now in terms of my physical condition because of this spinal arthritis and diabetes, but people who see me that don't know me know that I work out, and they'll often approach me on that level, ask me questions about working out because I'm obviously old. I have white hair and gray hair, so they'll ask me questions about working out as you get older and so forth. So it's visible that I lift or lifted at one point lots of weights, and that's a good feeling when people you don't
Yeah. Oh,
know the truth.
exactly. Well, so in going through and dealing with this crisis that I was having, a crisis of confidence, I guess is what I should say. I went through and I made some adaptations, and that was one of the things that really settled me down to make me realize. And full disclosure, this is horrible from a writing standpoint, but I'm back in my flow now. So it's worked out this morning because it was
You're
President's
freezing
Day,
up
so I
a
had
little,
the day off
Ryan.
doing some really. I'm sorry, say that again, sir.
You're freezing up a little bit.
Okay, we'll see. Maybe the connection will stabilize. Hopefully.
Now
Um,
you're,
okay, good. Uh, I've gotten back in my routine, and it's kind of, especially whenever you're after you're done. Uh, the argument that I'll go through and make is that I've never regretted going to the gym. I've always regretted not going, but I've never regretted going in and getting a work at it. Sometimes I'd go and push myself outs that I've ever had, whereas if I just would have sat at home, I probably would have felt worse. And so there for a couple of weeks, I was down a little bit, but then I was also going through and I was making these plans, and that's how I kept a hold of my confidence, going, okay, we're in a shallow right now, but we're going to find our way back up the hill, and everything will be okay. And so two of the things that I did, which really helped me out in this regard, is I made a couple of purchases. So we've talked on here before. I'm a big fan of what they call steady state cardio. So the difference is, so there's steady state cardio, and then there's HIIT, high intensity interval training. So basically, steady state is where you're on the treadmill. I like to go through and put it at a pretty decent incline, and you're walking at a decent speed. I'm not really designed for running. And if I go through and do high intensity interval training, which is where you're at a really high level for a short amount of time and you bring it back down and you raise it back up again, it's supposed to go through and torch fat. But what I have discovered is that if I do high intensity interval training, there's only so much fuel in my tank. And if I go through and do HIIT training, it robs if I do that front, then on the back end, I don't have as much energy to go through and lift the weights. And so for me, lifting weights is a little more of a higher priority than the cardio is, even though cardio is very important. We should do that. But I feel like for me, it's lifting weights is what I enjoy more. So for me, what I do is I start every exercise with a mile, just to kind of go through and warm up. And usually it's at like a 6-degree incline at 3 miles an hour. So I'm not, but it's also, I'm not taking medicine. Or, I mean, if it takes me a little longer to do that mile, that's fine. I'd rather take 20 minutes to do a mile than to do a mile in 10 minutes and not have energy left over after that mile is over. So I work out at a commercial gym that's about 10 minutes away. In Oklahoma, we rate everything by how long it takes for us to get there, not by the distance of miles. So it's about 10 minutes for me to get to my gym. And up there, they have these pre-core treadmills that are, I looked them up online, probably shouldn't have, but they're like $2,000 a piece, like used. I think they're like a
wow.
$2,000 machine. And
There,
so it's like, well, wow, they got 5 of those sitting here. Okay, so that's a whole. Go ahead.
there are, when I lived in Pennsylvania, which is more rural than where I'm currently living, um, I used to go to the Salvation Armies and the Goodwills, and there was something called Free Cycle where people wanted to get rid of stuff because a lot of people they buy exercise equipment and then it sits around taking up space and collecting dust, and they wind up hanging their wet clothes over stuff like that. And I was able to, I picked up a leg
Right.
press machine disassembled, but they didn't know what it was. It just looked like a bunch of metal and and like covered leather covered pieces, but I was able to construct in my mind. I picked up a leg press machine for $5.
That's
I
pretty
picked up
good.
two universal machines, one for nothing and one for $25. So if you check like the equivalent of Free Cycle and the equivalent of the Salvation Army and Goodwill, thrift stores, sometimes you can find really
Right.
expensive exercise equipment going for a song.
And so we're going to get to that because that's important to me too. It's a great piece of advice. But so in going through and looking at these pre-cores, again, 2 grand. I mean, it's really freaking expensive, but these are the ones, I mean, they crank all the way up to like 12 or 15 and they go a crazy amount of miles per hour. But to me, if I went through and I spent that amount of money on a Precore machine, to me, it's like buying a 400 horsepower automobile that I'm only going to drive in the school zones because, you know, I do a small amount of incline and basically I'm just doing walking. So instead, because my son picked one up and I had a little bit of experience with his, if you do a search on Amazon, they're called walking pads. And so the walking pads, they're like the max speed is usually like 4 miles an hour. Depending upon which ones you get, the incline is only like 3. But I was like, well, I could get some yoga blocks or something to put underneath there to give me that incline if I needed more of it. But I was like, let's just test this out and see what it is. And I got mine for, I want to say it was like $125.
Oh,
So
wow.
this is something, yeah, it's about 40 pounds. So as of right now, I've got my hallway. But you know, I break it out whenever I'm going to go through it. I'm going to watch a couple of TV shows, and I'll go through here and I'll get my cardio in. And so again, 3 miles an hour, a little bit of a 3 incline. And after I used this for a couple of times, I got off of it, and then like the next day, I was like, man, my legs are really sore. And I was like, this. It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me because I was like, no, wait a minute. I'm usually, you know, doing it like a 5 or a 6 incline. But again, we're targeting these muscles in such a way that's going to shock them into experiencing something new. And so by me so it's me going at the 3 incline, but my muscles aren't used to working at that incline. So I feel like it's more of a development all over. So it's like, hey, sometimes even though the exertion level may not be as high as what I'm doing up at the commercial gym, it's still beneficial. And then I can go through and I can continue to clock my miles. So I do keep track of how many miles I'm doing. So last year, I want to say my goal was 365 and I eclipsed that, you know, fairly easily. I want to say I was like 425, I think, by the time it was all said and done
That is awesome.
for 2024. I mean, it's just going through, getting warmed up, and it's, you know, it's feeling good. And so right now, if I do like a mile to get warmed up tomorrow, if the weather, you know, doesn't come in bad, um, then I'll break 75 miles so far, and we're in the middle of February. So it's like, so my totals are really high. Now, granted, in January I was doing a lot of cardio, but for this, I think it was tremendously beneficial. And this is something that you can put underneath your desk, or you know, something to do whenever you're watching TV. So to me, it was a tremendous benefit. And so it's me going, okay, so maybe if I can get to a point where, I mean, so I'll get off this thing after doing 2 miles and I've got a sweat going. I mean, I'm going to have to take a shower afterwards. So to me, it's something tremendously beneficial for those days where we're going to get snowed in and I'm still going to be able to do something. So I did the walking pad for a small investment. I think the return on investment in that is going to be really, really
Yeah.
high. But then I did another program that I started at work, and I highly encourage everyone to do this. So I started what I called my Curls for the Girls program. So Curls for the Girls, the saying is, yes, the curls are for the girls and the tries are for the guys. So we go through, and if you're trying to impress a woman, you want to have big biceps. But guys, we notice other dudes' triceps. And so what I did is I went through and I made a physical chart. And this is really the most important thing. So I'm a big believer in using bands, the elastic resistance bands. Just real simply, real quickly. So the reason why the bands are so effective is because whenever you're going through and you're lifting the weight, say like with a dumbbell or with a barbell curl, if you're going to fail, it's going to be after you get to about 90 degrees. But if you can get beyond 90 degrees, then you can go through, and the rest of that is kind of garbage time. But so with the band, it's completely different. The farther you stretch that band, the more the resistance comes.
Right.
So the walking pad and the Curls for the Girls program, it's not taking the place of anything. It's a little addition that I'm adding in. So I have some of these bands that I keep in my office, in my desk, in my office at work. And so what I did is I laid out a physical chart and said, okay, I'm going to be here for 8 hours. So I want to do one set for every hour. And so by going through and doing that with the resistance band that I have up there right now, the weight that it is, it's about 25 reps that is going to be my goal. And so if I feel like maybe I can squeeze in a few more reps if I have to, or if I feel like I can, but sometimes I'll go through and slow down the tension and really slow down those curls to go through and build my arms up. But so by going through and doing that, so it's 25 reps every hour for the 8 hour workday.
Wow.
Well, if I do that, that's 200 reps per day that I'm going through and doing this. So, by the time you get to the end, that's 1,000 reps in a month. And so go through and do this for 4 weeks and see how differently your arms feel. And so I've been doing this for a couple of weeks, but I don't know necessarily if I'm developing more size but right now my arms feel a little denser, for lack of a better term. And so this doesn't have to be completely restricted to, to curls. It's the easiest one to be able to do. And the bicep is one of the fastest recovering muscles in the body. So to go through and do this every hour, maybe not necessarily on the hour, but to go through and do this, yeah, 1,000 reps in a week. You're going to see a change if you do that. If you do that for a month. So by going through and doing this, the other thing that I've noticed. So again, we talk on here a lot about my Apple Watch that I use.
Yes.
And by the way, boy, Precor, they make a darn fine treadmill machine. So if they're fantastic, one of the best that you can possibly get. So if Precor wants to send me a treadmill, message me and I'll do videos of me
There you go.
walking on it, whatever. But so one,
Actually, I was going to ask because in the past, when I was producing more shows on fitness, companies used to send me books, and they used to send me DVDs, and they used to send me exercise equipment. And sometimes I had the time to, read it and review it, but a lot of times I didn't. It's like when I had my TV show, I used to get crates of DVDs. I can't possibly watch all the DVDs that produce a show and work. So I wind up reviewing like a small number of them. So if you would like to build this up with me, we can start reviewing equipment. That's something I've done
sure,
in the past, and we could do it again.
yeah. So Precor, hit us up,
Yeah.
and we'll go through. We'll give honest assessments. But so the reason why I mentioned the Apple Watch is because so it goes through, it tracks the amount of time that I'm standing throughout the day. You can go through, you can set it to whatever goal that you want. For me right now, it's 12 hours. So every 12 hours, or so throughout the day, my goal is to stand for at least 1 minute, and then my watch will sit there and it'll vibrate on me at 10 minutes until the top of the hour. It says, hey, you need to get up and move around. So, and that's good. We should be doing that about every 30 minutes. But sometimes you get locked in on a project at work, or I'm going through and I'm writing in my next book, and time kind of starts to get away from me. And so my watch will go through here and vibrate. And ever since I started this Curls for the Girls program, my watch hasn't vibrated. It hasn't come along and said, hey, it's time for you to get up and stand up and move around. So just by going through and adding this in and starting to think about, well, okay, so if I do the curls for a month, okay, what do I do next? What can I easily do with the bands? And so maybe it's, hooking it onto a doorknob and going through and pulling it. So that way I'm, working my back. I could go through and I could do the straight, arm raises. So that way I
Uh,
can go through and I can work my front delt. So it's kind of limited to the environment that I have available. That if I can jump up once every hour, and do that again, 1,000 reps over the course of a week, you're going to be doing all right. So that's pretty good. But
Back in the
so
90s, I used to do something very similar. I worked in the human services, so whenever I had a new job and I had my office, I'd find the nearest Models or store like that, or Dick's, I guess, whatever stores there were that sold exercise equipment. And back then weights were very cheap. So for $20, I'd get a weight set, with a dumbbell weight set, and then have it in my office. And I would do what you described. I would do arm exercises and then just do them throughout the day and get a pump. And then when I go to the gym, I would just focus on the larger areas of my body. But I would do like arms and shoulders and things like that. That's why I didn't do those during my major workout. And yeah, you're right. Your arms get pretty big and they get pretty hard.
But I do think the key for me anyway, the key is going through and writing it down. So that way, I created the chart. So I go through, print that off at work. So that way, I'm physically going through and checking off the work that I'm doing
Mhm.
every hour. So that way, it keeps me accountable. And so if I can go through and throw in some extra bonus sets, okay, that's great. But if you're listening and you want to incorporate this program, I highly recommend going through and physically writing that out just for your own personal accountability. So, curls for the girls, again, it's an addition. The walking pad, it's an addition. It's not going to take the place of going up and working out at the commercial gym. And so for the longest time, I have kind of stayed away from uh, going through and building a home gym. But with the weather going bad the way it did and really shutting me down, I guess like last year, I guess it wasn't this bad, but this year it's been a little rougher. So I'm seriously considering going through and carving out a small section in my what we call the downstairs, just to go through and develop my own little personal space. So if I want to do something in the evening, or if I want to do something, whenever I can't make it out because the weather's bad. So I kind of want to go through and start to build without spending a whole lot of money. I want to get a good, what we call it ROI, return on my investment.
Right.
So if you were going to go through, so I work out at the commercial gym because my whole thing has been like, we'll let them pay for it. A 45-pound weight, it's going to be like $45. It's too much money. But so I know that you work out of your home. So
Yes.
if you were to go through and say for whatever reason you have to start over, and so you're going to go through and you're going to build your home gym, what would you have in it? What would you not say, this really wasn't worth it? What are some must haves? What are some things that you would pass on? And what's going to give you the most price per pound? If you like beef, you understand what I'm talking about.
Right.
Yeah. So what's the price per pound? I mean, because I can go through and I can get a thing of bands that are pretty darn cheap compared to the cost of weights. And also if you're in a limited space. But what if you were going to go through and build a brand new home gym? What are your must-haves?
I've done this so many times too throughout my life. Usually I will get a bench and a weight set that has both the barbells and dumbbells to start. And then later on, I'll add other types of bars like neural bars and other type of bars that hit the muscles from different angles. And I like weightlifting toys. So like a spring twister, I'll get, like I have one right here. I can't reach it right now. Um,
Okay.
I have like a spring twister, which is one of those, it's metal handles and has a spring in the middle. So
Oh yeah.
you do that. I have a like a thigh machine that you put in your thighs and then you close your legs and so far and build those muscles. So I would accumulate in addition to the basic bench and the um, weights, I would just get toys that help me target certain muscles. I might get a rubber ball to help with my feet. I might get a bunch of those foot roller things for both my hands and feet, stimulate the muscles and the nerves. And then it would depend how much space I had, whether I'd get more things. But that's always been my basic thing. I don't have a bench here. I actually gave my bench to a friend because I don't have the space to really do safe bench exercises here.
Well, so one of the things that, so again, time is always against us. We all know that. And so if I want to go through and put in 20 minutes worth of cardio, and then if I want to do 40 minutes worth of lifting weights, so there's my hour, and usually that's about as much time as I have before I have to sprint to get home, in order to shower and be ready to make it to the office in time. So one of the things that I thought about putting in were going to be the padded flooring, the jigsaw looking things you could put those in, so that way I can start working on my stretching more. So some yoga mats, things like that, where so I don't necessarily have all the time that's required whenever I'm at the gym, but I could stretch here at
Right.
home. So I would think that that would be something that's very important because I've read too much stuff about people going through it and not doing appropriate stretching to go through and really keep those muscles, flexible and loose. So I think that's something that I was gonna want to go through and add in.
Yeah, a mirror also, you get an inexpensive mirror. I always have one of those. And yeah, I actually used to have my bench and now I have my equipment on yoga mats.
Okay.
So I have the yoga mats there as well.
Is there anything out there that you would just that you would pass on to say, oh, this was too expensive and I didn't use it enough?
Some of the, like this, I got a squat rack once again. I got it from a thrift store for practically nothing. And I wound up not using it. And the universals that I got, I had two universals eventually. Um, one of them gave me really good workouts and the other one didn't.
So
So
the universals, is that what you're talking about where it has like the multi-station?
yeah, the
Uh,
multi-station, the
okay.
multi-station thing. It would also have a bench too, but I like my benches separately because with the benches I could do the inclines and declines and so forth.
Well, so one of the things that I noticed, because like everyone else that is perpetually online these days, the algorithm has me. It knows what I like, it knows what I buy, and all that sort of stuff. So when I logged in to look at Walmart on Black Friday, they were all like, you might be interested in this. And it was one of those big universal machines, like you called it. And they were like, oh, it's this tremendous savings. And if you buy it right now, it's going to be really dirt cheap. And then I started looking over on Amazon and I was like, well, actually, this is just about the same price as, what you guys are claiming is Black Friday sales. So for viewers, be careful, do your research, make sure that, it's what you're going to be able to use it and make sure that you're not, overpaying for it. But so that's one of the things I'm trying to decide is do I want to stick with the free weights? Do I actually want to go through and put a universal machine down there? I mean, it's possible I can, and this may be something that I slowly start to accrue over time, where I've got a variety of different stages of equipment. So that'd be my warning for people. Go through, really do your research before you go through and just make a snap purchase just because they say it's a Black Friday sale.
Yeah, I agree because I guess another disappointment is some of the ab things, like an ab roller and the crunching type of machines that you put on your chest and you bend over. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
some of those have been good, but a lot of them I just bought it because it was cheap and I wanted to try it because I like the weightlifting toys. And then I wound up never using it, and it's sitting in a plastic bin somewhere in the basement. You
Mm.
know, then every now and then I'll just give them away because I'm not using them, so somebody else might benefit from it. There
Well,
was also
so
a great set
uh,
where it used to shake.
oh yeah.
The spring thing. I've had several of those over the years, and I've given it chances, and maybe it's just me, but I couldn't figure out how to make it work effectively.
Right.
None of the times I've had it, it seemed theoretically like a good idea, but maybe it's just me, but I couldn't figure out how to really apply it. So that too was given away. We have a like a community night in our uh, town, and I've made it a custom of mine that at community night to have a table. And I used to be chairperson of several committees related to health. So I used to take all my extra books and exercise equipment that I wasn't using anymore and give them away.
Mm.
If anybody wanted it, they could take it. And then whatever books I had left over, I would donate them to the local library, like, or give them, if people wanted to meet me in the Stop and Shop, they can meet me there and I'll give them whatever book. I used to list a book a week and give that away. And then people would let you know something that they have that's been sitting there collecting dust, and you come across some really great stuff that way as well.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful the way that you're going through and paying that forward. Well, I have to imagine that we're getting close here on time. And
Yes.
so one of the things that with bodybuilding, one of the things that we're trying to do is we're trying to develop an overall physique. And so a lot of times I like to go through and I like to compare it to a flashlight aperture. And so sometimes you can have that aperture wide open, and so you're targeting a large muscle group. But then there are other times where you can go through and you can really tighten up that aperture, and so you're just focusing on one singular muscle group. And whenever you're going through and you're focusing in on that single muscle, what you're going to find is that you are going to get exhausted pretty quickly because you're not letting all the other muscles jump in to help whenever that muscle becomes fatigued. And so that's where you just have to learn. So whenever we say going to failure, it's going to a point where you can no longer continue to do that rep range. So I'm real bit. I love shoulders. Whenever, as part of my road back was to go through, I like to pair my shoulder exercises with my lat exercises, and that's kind of my antagonistic set that I
Me
love to
too.
do. There's so many varieties that you can do, and so one of the things that they were talking about is the side lateral raise. Now, I haven't had a chance to test this out with a dumbbell. I suppose I should, but I like using cables to go through and do that side lateral raise. And so one of the techniques that I've been experimenting with, and I do believe that this works. Okay, so if you're going through and you're doing that side lateral raise, whenever you're going through and you're raising that arm, once it starts to get fatigued, a lot of times your trapezius muscle is going to want to jump in. And so
Right.
you want to go through and you just want to isolate that so you can get what they call in the industry the capped delts, is what's everyone talking about, where you want to have those big full shoulders. Well, for whatever reason, because of the biomechanics of it, it feels a little weird whenever you first do it. But so I have to imagine this would work with a dumbbell. Haven't had a chance to try with that, but I've tried it with a cable. And instead, what you're going to do is you're going to take your arm. I don't know if I can get this in frame or not. But you're going to. Oh, my selfie game is weak. But so basically, what you're going to do is you're going to hold the handle in such a way that your wrist is pointing down. And if
Right.
you go through and you do it in this manner, what's going to happen is once you go to raise that arm up, if your knuckles are pointing down towards the ground, because of the biomechanical nature of it, your trap physically cannot jump in to help you with that raise. So if you're keeping everything in that scapular plane, you're going through and raising it up with your knuckles down. Again, all my selfie stuff is no good. But so if you can keep that down whenever you're going through and doing that raise up, it's going to put all that emphasis on that side delt, won't let your trap jump in. So that way you're really isolating it down to that one muscle. So for your lifting technique for the close for the show, go through and keep your knuckles pointed down whenever you're doing those side lateral raises. Keep your trap out of it completely, and that'll go through and focus more on that side delt that you're trying to target.
Thank you so much, Ryan. I enjoyed our conversation a great deal. I'm looking forward to this new adventure on YouTube. And how can people find you and learn more about all the wonderful things that you're doing?
Until Facebook goes through and makes me do side pictures of myself to confirm my identity, I'm going to stick around over there.
Good idea.
You can find me on Facebook. If you find your way back there, I'm not on a lot of the other socials. I do TikTok, but I don't make any videos. So that's no. So finding me on Facebook is the absolute best way. But if you are so inclined and would like to read some of the stuff that Hercules and I were talking about earlier on in the show, Amazon.com. If you look for Ryan Foley, you're going to find my the graphic novels that I've had that I've been part of teams to go through and build. I've always just been the writer, not the artist. But so you can find the graphic novels on there, and then you can also find my novels that I'm publishing exclusively on Amazon.
And your comics as well.
Yes,
And since a lot of the shows we did are lost, as far as I know, we will get a chance to discuss and revisit all those topics again. So
fantastic.
thank you so much, Ryan. Happy belated Valentine's Day, happy President's Day, happy all the holidays. They're going to come up, and I wish you safe journeys on the morrow. May it be not as disastrous as anticipated. May you be safe and warm.
I hope so. Thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate this. I appreciate this conversation. I mean, this one specifically, I thought was very insightful, but just also, man, just as a whole, great to see you. I mean, beyond just our conversations, great to see you. Great to talk to you again. Thank you very much for providing me this venue to go through and hopefully help people.
Thank you very much, and thank you for sharing. You're very generous and very kind.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I always have difficulty with the little buttons here. Here we go. Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay.